developer comes in and they're within a certain price range or square footage, we pay for those SDCs. And so far this year, it's been even as of July, I think we've already exceeded any prior year as far as the number of building permits that have been issued.
Welcome to Shaping the Basin. I am here with Jonathan Teichert, the city manager. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I want to know, when you were growing up, did you think you'd be a city manager?
Not at all.
No?
No. I grew up in a rural area of Wyoming on a ranch. It was very remote. I never really expected to even work for the government or be a city manager. I always thought I'd just own cows and be a rancher somewhere. So this is completely different than anything I ever anticipated growing up.
What got you into it?
I kind of fell into it. I had worked out of college at for a city in Idaho. I was a Parks and Recreation director. And I figured, I've done this for several years. I just as well get paid to be yelled at. And so I went back to school. I went to University of Wyoming, and I got my master's degree. It was in public administration. And before I graduated, I was hired by the state of Wyoming to the state parks and cultural resources. I wrote their statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, SCORP. Every state writes one, and it enables them to qualify for federal land and water conservation funding. And I just finished that, and they hired me full time. So I did that while I was in graduate school, and so I had some experience with state government. And the county back where I grew up was hiring as a county planner, and I applied, and they hired me, and I spent 12 years working as a city planner. There were 11 incorporated municipalities within that county, and I had experience with all of them, working with them. And so there was a town opening as a town manager, and the outgoing town manager there talked me into applying. And so that's how my first foray, I guess, into city management was there. And so I don't know, other than I just kind of fell into it. And this seemed to be the route that I was pushed.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you love about it?
I like working at the local level. It's just, there's more flexibility. Things get done. You see results much sooner than you would working in like state government or federal. There are things just come up and they work so slowly. And so I like working at the local level where you can actually see results and you can get things done.
What frustrates you about it?
Probably the pace also, even though I wish it would work faster than it does. Even though it works faster than state or federal government, it's just that pace. And then you have all of the, there's all the rules. There's unions that you have to negotiate with. And so things don't always, I think a lot of people, when they run for public office, have these expectations that they're going to come in and they can make all sorts of changes. And then they find out, there's statutes and there's things that they have to abide by. Right. And I think that kind of frustrates them. And same thing with me.
Yeah. What is it like? There's a city manager, mayor, city council. What is that dynamic like?
Yeah. So I see myself more as like a CEO would answer to a board of directors. I answer to an elected board of city council and mayor. I'm kind of the go-between between them and staff. I handle the day-to-day operations, the budget, and then oversee the different departments, police and finance and public works, utilities, all of those different entities, just to try and make sure that things go smoothly.
Mm-hmm. How many departments are in the city?
So we have, I have 5. We have our finance department. We have police. We have public works, development services, which is planning, engineering, legal, which is kind of separate from me, with IT under, or excuse me, with human resources falls under legal too. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
What are some of the most exciting things happening at the city right now?
we have a couple things that have generated quite a bit of interest lately. One of them is our new city hall that we just purchased a building to consolidate all of our services under one roof. It's 300 Klamath Avenue. It's a building that's been mostly vacant for the past year. I think it's going to be a great location for us that we can, you know, as far as serving our citizens, they can come to one location and we can address them there. Instead of right now, we're kind of located in 3 separate buildings in our downtown area. They can just come there and we can help, service them. But this is something we've been working on. I know it's been in the works for years. There's in our strategic plan from 2001, one of the goals was to find a location where we could all be under one roof. And excuse me, this came about. I remember it was a year and a half ago. We were going to the chamber legislative meetings up in Salem,
Mhm.
and I was riding up there with Randy Shaw in a blizzard in his Bronco, and I said, Randy, what's with the building? It had a for lease on it, and we got talking about that. And we came back. I looked through the building. At that time, we were a little bit. There was a pretty wide gap between what the seller and we were willing to offer on it. But here we are a year and a half later. They've accepted our terms and the offer. We've closed on it. So that's kind of exciting for us that we get to, move into that new location. Of course, they're making their Christmas list, what they want. And some people I think are going to be a little bit disappointed. But anyway, that's one of the things that we're looking to move in probably next July. We have some tenants in the upstairs who are building, that's Ag West. They're looking to locate out by Home Depot.
Mm.
They're building there. They'll probably be out sometime around July of next year. So that's the soonest that we'd be able to move. But anyway.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's very forward thinking. I think there's probably a lot of cost involved in maintaining the older buildings that you currently occupy. I think there's probably some efficiencies and savings for the city.
Yeah. So we had looked, I think it was in 2015, we had a study that had been conducted by, I believe it was, I can't remember what engineering firm we'd used. They looked at the cost just to renovate the 2 existing older buildings. And this is at $150 a square foot. Back then, you could double that today at $300 and still be safe. But even at that time, we were looking at the annex building at just over $1.1 million. And the old City Hall building where Development Services that was over 1.6 million at that time. Like I said, you could double those costs easily today. But if you were just to address, ADA at the old building, you'd look at least $1 million if you had to look at putting in a ramp up to that first landing. There's 9 interior doors that you'd have to widen to ADA standards, an elevator going up. We'd be $1 million into that. There's seismic retrofits and roofing, electrical, some HVAC that we would need to look at. So there's quite a bit of that we would need to put into those buildings just to get them, serviceable for us. So we had money that we've been putting away for some time into a building reserve fund to look at this. And so we had the funds available. It was cheaper for us just to buy this building and locate there than it was to put it back into those older structures. And they've served us well. I mean, they're 100 years old. They've done their part and served us well, but it just comes to a point where it's not financially feasible for us to continue just to invest and put money into a structure like that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you are thinking about what you're spending your time on right now, what are some of the biggest opportunities or or struggles in the community that you're really focused on right now?
Um, Costs, it sounds funny after just saying we spent $3.16 million on a new building, but um, this is something that just keeps me up at night. Is looking at we have a 10-year outlook and on our budget, and we see what our projections are for revenue, trying to meet the service demand for our community, looking at what our insurance costs are in the future, looking at what PERS rates are going up. It has me a little bit nervous for our future and how we address those. We're better than most communities, but we had just recently had a meeting with the League of Oregon Cities. They'd come here to Klamath Falls. It was interesting. They said that 2/3 of the municipalities in Oregon, and there's some 256 or something like that, 2/3 of those will be operating in a deficit by the end of this year. So I know that we're not the only ones struggling. We're not as far behind as most of these communities are either. So trying to address that, we know that we have some outlays in the future that are going to, like our stormwater or our waste treatment plant. We know that we're going to have some big expenditures there. With PERS, that's another one that we know that we're going to have to address here in the immediate future. And so we got some things that we're going to have to figure out. It's one of those things I tell our staff, nobody's going to come and bail us out. Like we're going to have to figure this out and pull ourselves up by the bootstraps because I don't see help coming.
Yeah. Well, seems like the thing is probably taking up a lot of your time for good reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Be interesting to see what the answer is. Do you have when you're looking at the projections, that's happening. How do you handle that? I'm curious. What
Yeah.
do you do?
Some of the things. Well, there's a couple things. One, you look at your costs. What do we know that we're coming up? One of the things I appreciated about my predecessor, he did this 10-year outlook, and we were able to budget for this. So we haven't added positions or salaries for quite some time. In fact, we're less than we've had. We look at efficiencies and how we operate, especially technology. We'll look at AI in the future and how that we can use that technology to be more cost conscious and efficient in our operations. We will look at also how do we expand our tax base. And I think you'd had Ian on our development services, and he probably talked about the airport and some of the things we're doing. The airport at one time had been we'd funneled money into that for so long, and it operated at a loss. And now the way we're operating, it's actually generating revenue for the rest of the city in fact, it's kind of subsidizing the rest of us right now. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at ways that we can, just to think differently. How can we operate more efficiently, but how can we generate revenue as well?
Mm-hmm. Can you, I know we talked about the new city building and you've mentioned the airport, but can you think of maybe another example or an example of what you're talking about?
Of ways we've tried to generate more money?
Or ways that you've thought of doing something a little differently?
Yeah. One of them is as far as our housing. We know we have a housing need. One of the things we did with, we'd recently sold a property to Amazon. We took the proceeds from that and we developed a housing fund. And what it does is, and this was partially to spur growth, we backfill SDCs. So when a developer comes in and they're within a certain price range or square footage, we pay for those SDCs. And so far this year, it's been, as of July, I think we've already exceeded any prior year as far as the number of building permits that have been issued. Eventually, those property taxes will come back to us, right? And we'll recoup those losses. So that's one thing that we're looking at doing. Another one is even looking at some of our blighted homes that we would look at. They're properties where the house is uninhabitable, and maybe we go in there and we offer the homeowner $5,000-7,000 for their property. It's worth more just bare land than it does with the structure on it. And so, and we tear that down and we get it in the hands of a builder and somebody who can do something with it and address that need. But like I said, in the long term, we're hoping that those pay us back.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an idea just curious, how many houses are uninhabitable in the city? Is there a lot of them?
There are a lot. We developed a list, and I think at one time, this is when Denise Scowell was at SCOED, and I think we had a list of around 1,000 uninhabited homes that
Dang.
were just in the area. Yeah.
Okay. That is
It's a
lot. I
lot.
would not have guessed that
Yeah.
many. What makes them uninhabitable?
So if I think these were ones that we determined they didn't have water or electric utilities serving them anymore. They hadn't been lived in for several years. There were code issues that weren't addressed. So I think that's the criteria we looked at.
Makes sense. Are the majority of them owned by local people? Do you have any
No.
idea?
No, I would say most of them aren't. Probably by people that, passed away, and some of them are in probate. There's liens on some of them. So we do a title search on most of these properties. So, some of them have back taxes owed on them. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Do they go up for auction eventually? Or I'm just curious what the process looks
With
like.
the county, yeah. So eventually they do. They'll go to the tax sale with the county. If
Mhm.
I think it's 4 years, but I'm not sure if that's right
Okay.
with the
Interesting.
county. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I want to turn it to you a little bit. So you you grew up in Wyoming.
Yeah.
You started your career in this avenue in Wyoming.
Yeah.
What brought you to Klamath Falls, Oregon?
I was contacted by a recruiter with SGR about this opportunity, and I looked at the flyer and I thought that's a pretty location, beautiful place. And so at the time I was looking at another city in Wyoming that was just north of us, Gillette, and they had an opening at the time as a city manager, and I just thought that's probably where I'll go. But I applied here, and it was back. This is in February. I came out. It was mid-50s. The weather was wonderful, and I just thought, what a beautiful place. I had a couple extra days, so we went up to Crater Lake, Mount Shasta. I went to the coast, and I remember driving down the Smith River and just how gorgeous it was. And then I drove through these redwood trees at Jedediah Smith State Park and saw the coast, and I was just blown away how beautiful it was. The climate seemed nice. We met a lot of great people, and we interviewed, and it went well. And I thought, this seems like my type of people here. And I was just really shocked. I was blown away. They offered me the position before I'd gone on the flight, and we ended up here, and I've loved it.
Mm-hmm.
My wife has loved it. My son, we just enjoyed our being here, and I feel like I'm a good fit for this community.
It's easy to get lost. Don't know which path to take, what to post. In the social media jungle, video is king. Your kids are obsessed, your customers are addicted, we're all hooked, and social media sites prioritize videos. So when you're ready to stand out from the crowd, reach out to 40 Deuce Films. Feeling over everything.
I have not been to Wyoming, but I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear you say weather in February was wonderful.
Yeah.
If they're from here. So what is weather in Wyoming like in February? It must be awful.
It's usually well below zero. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up in the western part of the state, and it's more mountainous there, but you don't have the wind there. You get these cold inversions that sit in those valleys, and even though we were in a deep valley, our elevation was 6,200 feet elevation. And so that cold air just sits in there all winter long, and it's below zero for months sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I worked on the other side of the state, went to school in Laramie, and the state capital there in Cheyenne, the wind blows just incessantly across there. So when I come here, I thought, man, this is nice, mid 50s, and it didn't have the wind blowing. I just thought weather here, I do like the climate here. It's rare that it gets 100 degrees. It's rare that it ever hits to zero. It's just, I think we got a great climate. I like the dry air. I like the mountains, sunshine.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful here too. I am curious. We do a lot of relocation information here. People thinking of moving here to the area.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do some tours for professionals that want to come in. We do a lot of those for the medical community primarily. But I'm curious if you could tell us what your experience was like moving here. Do you feel like you were accepted quickly and got to know people right away and felt like you were a part of the community right away?
I feel like I was accepted right away, and I think part of it, I remember I came here on my interview, and I was dressed similar to, I was wearing cowboy boots, I remember, and a belt buckle, and I don't know if that was, people saw me and thought, oh, he could be from here,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, people have reached out. They've been very kind, welcoming to me and my family. Like feel like we've just fit in, and all of our neighbors, people we met, my staff have all been great. They all are outdoorsmen. They all fish and hunt and camp, and that's the reason they live here. And that's kind of some of the stuff I grew up doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, it's been a good experience.
And did sometimes I hear that it's a little bit harder, maybe more difficult for the spouses when people like maybe the husband or wife gets a job here and they have that instant connection, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be a little bit more of a struggle for the spouse. Did your wife find that, or how was that experience for her?
A little bit. So back in Wyoming, she had a salon, and she had her friends, and she knew everything that was going on long before I did, even at the city, So it's been a little bit different for her, but she loves to shop. And that's one thing, coming from a rural community in Wyoming where there's, we were 70 miles to the nearest Walmart, coming here, and she has everything. There's grocery stores all over. And so she does like that, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I think that's funny that that perspective is important. If you've lived somewhere huge and you come here, you might feel like there's no shopping. But if you come from a really small community where you had to drive 70 miles to a Walmart, it probably feels like we have endless shopping.
And that was one of the things when I was looking here, I really didn't want a community. I didn't want to work in a community or live in a community bigger than 25,000. And this was, it said on the thing 23,000. And it's a little bit deceiving, you could almost double that, and that's our population. But yeah, it's just the right size to me. I really wouldn't want to live in a bigger city than this.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. Going back to the city and the way the city operates, what are a couple things you wish people understood about this, how the city operates?
The budgeting process. I'm surprised that, we never have, when we adopt a budget, nobody's there. And I'm surprised how many people, I pay income tax and I should have, most of them who complain actually don't even live in the city limits. It's because it's a convoluted boundary, right, between us and Altamont. And so we get complaints from people. Just recently it was somebody out in Keno, and we've had somebody from Bly who think that they live within the city or city limits. And so that's a little bit confusing, but then just how their tax dollars are spent and used, and where they go to. We don't get any income tax, state or federal income tax. That doesn't come to us solely. It's property tax. And even then, it's a limited part of our budget. Almost every cent of every dollar that we generate in property tax to the city goes to our police department alone. So the rest of our departments, we fund through franchise fees and grants and other means. Mm-hmm. So I wish people could understand a little bit better how they're, and we put videos on our webpage just to help try and educate like where their money goes. Mm-hmm. So just inform them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll put a link to that. I'll put a link in the show notes for this episode on that so that people can see where those are if they're interested.
Yeah.
You mentioned boundaries.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but I always think like if you go down Washburn, on this side of the street, it's city, and on that side, it's not. And then you go down a block and it's like this side is, but that's why is it that way?
Yeah, it's a little bit convoluted out there. Part of that, so we serve water to all of those customers out there. That, when we do serve them, they signed an agreement not to contest annexation. And some of them, when they're contiguous, we will annex them in. Some of them, they're just not contiguous to us, and so we can't. So that's why we have some areas that are almost like donuts that are annexed all the way around them. So it's, and it's a dirty word, annex. I know it's, I hate to even say it because
I'm like, do we want to talk about that? No, I'm just kidding.
It's one of those, I know that there's been efforts or thoughts in the past. It would make, I mean, if we were a community of 50,000, like recruiting industry, motels, restaurants, it becomes a lot easier when you can say you're a community of 50,000 people. But on the other hand, we don't really, we lose money on residential, all the commercial, industrial. Yeah, I would take that. Mm-hmm. The residences, just because of Measure 5 and 50 and the way they're set up, like we spend more money than they generate in property tax to us. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really in a rush to want to annex a lot of the south suburbs. I'm not. And I'm sure they would appreciate that. They don't want to increase their property tax, and it would cost us more. We'd have to subsidize it. So there's kind of a balance there,
Yeah. You're not the first person to mention Measure 5 and 50 on the podcast. I haven't asked this yet, but can you explain in a nutshell what those are?
Yes. And I get the two of them mixed up sometimes. One of them limits property tax increases to 3%, no more per year. And that's based on per thousand valuation. The other one limits local governments and school districts to $15 per thousand valuation. And so we actually can't, when people say you're just going to increase my taxes, well, we really can't. We're already at that threshold. Local governments are at up to $10 per thousand valuation, and school districts, I believe, are allowed another $5 per thousand valuation. So we're already at our limit there. And like I say, we can only increase at best at 3%. And it doesn't, so it's a little different than, for instance, California or Idaho. When a property changes hands, that resets. That doesn't happen in Oregon. So it goes back to whenever that was adopted. And so that's why we're very limited in our property tax. We can't just raise taxes on people.
Mm-hmm. There's a limit. Yeah. You said something that sparked another question. We talked about vacant houses or inhabitable houses in the community, but do you have any idea how many vacant commercial properties there are in the city?
I don't. It's interesting. I just had this conversation with Jennifer with KFDA. They're doing an inventory of a number of our buildings in our downtown, for instance, have empty second and third and fourth floors,
Mhm.
and which I would love to see more residential housing in our downtown
Mhm.
on those vacant floors. And I I think we could put 500. This isn't just a guess in my mind, just looking at the number. I think we could house 500 units in our
Mhm.
downtown just on empty upper floors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard, and this is a correct me if I'm wrong question, I guess, if you will. But if there's a property and it changes hands, like a commercial property, are they then required to like update sidewalks or driveways or anything like that if there's a change of hand in property?
No, not usually, unless it's been. I think if it's been vacant for several years.
Hmm.
We had a building just up from us that was purchased. It had been for sale for 3 or 4 years,
Mhm.
where the Klamath Smiles was, and
Okay.
um, there was we required a permit from them only because it was a change of use.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't really a change of use, but it was a new use that hadn't been, you
Okay.
know. So, um, kind of.
Yeah. Do you feel like I guess, is it easy for people to start that process? Like, should they not be afraid to come and talk to the city about the idea that they have?
I hope not. I hope
Yeah.
because we'd love to help them out, and that's one of the things that we stress to our staff is, hey, I don't want to hear no or we can't. It's yes, and here's how we can help you,
Mhm.
right? And we're trying to get to that point.
Yeah. I like that mindset.
So
Very good. I appreciate all of your insights today. I learned a lot about the city and about being a city manager. Thank you.
oh sure.
If I were to give you $250,000 to make a difference in our community by the end of the day, what would you do with it?
Wow. 250,000. There's several things I would like to do. One, if we could, like, if you could clean the lake to like a recreational lake, I think that would change Klamath Falls like overnight.
Mhm.
Really, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Commercial air service would be big. Um, the base, if it was an active base and there was a second squadron, that would be huge for our community. The medical school, that would be huge for the community. Um, Downtown housing, like I said, our goal 500 units in our downtown, that would be big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Tell
Any of
me,
those? I don't know.
those are all good options. We need more than
Yeah, you
$250,000.
need more than 250.
I
Yeah.
like it. Tell me about one of your role models.
Oh, I had he's since retired. Uh, Barry Cook. He was a city manager in Green River, Wyoming. And then he went up to Cody, and I was just new into city management and really just trying to feel my way around. And he was always very good at answering any questions I had, and if I'd approach him about anything, he was just always helpful and willing to sometimes hear me out, and never really quick to offer advice. Just helped guide me.
Mm-hmm.
I always appreciated that about him.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
yeah, he just retired. I want to say within the last year,
Mm-hmm.
and but he was probably a good mentor for me.
That's great. If you were, tell me what your perfect day in Klamath would look like.
Work or not related?
I will let you decide.
Oh, I had one just a week ago. Uh, we got up early. My son has his sportsman's pack. He's just turned 13 years old, so we went out hunting for the day, and we really didn't have any success in seeing any critters. But it was what a beautiful day, and just to get out. My wife was there with us, and we saw some sign. We saw 2 does, but and I didn't really care if he shot. That's when the work begins once he gets something. But it was just nice. Just my family and I, we were out. My wife spent more time just picking mushrooms. And we just enjoyed the day. And I think that was like a perfect day.
That sounds like a good day. Thank you for your time today, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thank you to our producer, 40 Deuce Films.